Tonight we're going to get into a program for a soccer player. I did the post just like yesterday. Reading comprehension sucks. I had 3 or 4 people reach out and say, how do I get the code? Read the post. So if we were to play a game, for example, if I were to ask you guys, what's the largest city in the world? Who could get that answer?
New York.
New York. Not even close. Not even in the top 30.
Hong Kong.
That's up there. Nope.
Oh, geez, we're talking about way out. Okay.
Anyone else?
I'd say India.
Well, that would be a country. But you're looking at Tokyo with a population of only 37 million. New York is a little less than 20. So if we were to play a game like that, obviously it would be not wrong to ask or not know the answer. But if I were to ask you guys, hey, can you do some research and come to me tomorrow with this answer? And then you were to ask me, well, what is the capital? Just that's your, or the answer. It's just your guys' lack of reading comprehension and listening. So there was 3 people that are going to miss out on tonight's call because they didn't read the post. Now I'm doing these, as I've said to you before, selfishly, because we're going to be putting together a program guide for trainers out there that are trying to get, whether if it's hired at a corporate gym or just kind of lost in the whole the programming aspect, because we find that being a huge problem with new trainers. I just did a great call with a kid who I've got him through the doors to Crunch, kind of held his hand, and he got his NASM certification, and he's been lucky to, I've guided him right through the doors, exactly what you're going to be tested on. And we did a program analysis today of the scenario with what the instructors are looking for. And you can always tell what type of background the instructor has. And so the instructor sent him a hypothetical program, which we'll do later on. I'm going to put that into this because it was a good scenario. And one of the first things he said was, your client is a lawyer and she wears high heels. So right off the bat, that just rings what certification?
Sounds like a NASM thing.
There you go, 100% NASM, because what they're telling you to do is you got to foam roll and stretch the calves. And so with that data, now you know how to design the rest of the workout so you can play that game. But if you were to have a question such as what we're going to address today, and we're going to take a look at a soccer player, and so this is part of our guide. You can see that I'm going to get into the programming. So like in our internship class right now, we're going over the actions and the muscles that are engaged with certain movements. So like a horizontal push, you have 3 joints that are working. So at the elbow, you have extension. At the humerus, you have horizontal adduction, and the scapula, you have protraction. Being able to recognize the muscles that are associated with that, which would be the triceps at the elbow, and then your major at the humerus, and then your serratus anterior with the scapulas. Those are my expectations for trainers as you grow within the industry, if you want to be successful, to understand this stuff. So then you get into different exercises, your typical bro splits, your typical girl splits, because this is just going to give that trainer data for how to communicate with them. And if a soccer player comes in, and this is the fellow we're going to be working with today, 23-year-old male, 5'10", 160 pounds, BMI of 23. Profession as a soccer player, looking to try out for a semi-pro team. I took a year off playing, but's been active lifting weights. So a lot of times there's spelling errors in these two. I think I'm just going to leave them because it's actually like taken right off the form and maybe just put in the actual paper or the document saying like these are the actual submissions. Lifting weights and training regularly. I know with the right guidance, I can take my skills to that next level. I tore my ACL freshman year of college playing at Pepperdine. It's healed. It doesn't give me too much of a fit. I want to commit 2 to 3 sessions per week, part weights and also part conditioning. So recently with all the running, my ankle started acting up, but I'm pushing through it. Current program, run 4 to 5 miles 2 times per week, lifting weights 4 to 5 times per week, a lot of body weight push-ups and chin-ups, 100 to 200 per day of each. So this tells me a lot of data about this fella. And the one thing that I kind of stood out in my mind before I go over how my mind's working, and we're going to go through the NSCA, which is the needs analysis. And so when if you were to go to a corporate gym like a Crunch, this guy's in Florida, and you get a NASM trainer, speak NASM, you're good to go. But if you were to come to a program like in Sunset in West Hollywood, that's where our instructors Brock and Jared came from. They both played D1 football, and they have a background in sports and conditioning, strength and conditioning, and they're very NSCA based. They did not like and do not like NASM trainers. So if you go in there with, oh, what we're going to do with this football or soccer player is foam roll for 35 minutes, and then we're going to do a single leg scaption exercise and stability ball curl press, you're not going to get hired there. So you got to learn and be able to adapt to the individual who's potentially interviewing you. And when it's a sports related question, getting into the NSCA, which is the National Strength and Conditioning Association, and the needs analysis would be advantageous for you. So before I get into this, you guys have any questions or anything that's going off in your mind, anything that you're curious about? I'm working on my whiskey sponsorship. One of my students got me this. It's the coolest glass I've ever gotten. It says bottoms up to showing up. This is my Four Roses neat. This stuff is the best you can get. Imagine if we got a whiskey sponsorship, how legit you would be then. It's like, woo. So anyone have any questions before I get into this? So the first, and this is how my mind works, working in therapy and working with a lot of athletes, a red flag that went off was his tolerance to pain, and I don't like it. So he says right here, he tore his ACL freshman year. It's healed up, doesn't give me too much of a fit. It means it does. He's being tough. So, for example, right now I got Dean in front of me. Dean, can you go off mute real quick? All right. So answer this question for me. Does your nose hurt?
No.
See how quickly he said that? There's no registration to pain. The brain is going to immediately give a response. If I ask this guy, does your knee hurt? He's going to go, no, it's fine. He registers pain and he's being tough, and I don't want that. And so when you truly don't have pain, you will get an immediate response. If I'm doing a step up with him and I ask him, is there pain? He goes, it's all right. No, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to regress back. Because when I do a side step up and he steps up and I go to, is there pain? He goes, oh, wow. Actually, no, there's not. So being able to watch people and see how they register that stuff is really important, because if he's continually pushing through this, how strong is it? I don't know. And I need to do some type of hip internal external rotation drills to see where he has some dead space, where he's vulnerable. But that gives me kind of a scare, because he says it twice. He recently started running, his ankle started hurting, but I'm pushing through it. Don't push through it. Why would you push through it? I know that it's important, like in sport, when you're down a goal and there's 5 minutes left and you got a little, ache or something. Yeah, you gotta muscle up during that time. But in the training process, you need to get better as the strength coach to recognize those signs, so then you can take them off on a one-off and then help them properly fix it up. And so the things that I like to address when we go through working with an athlete is, come on, we're going to stop sharing this one. We're going to go to a new one. We're going to take a look at the needs analysis. And so the needs analysis, what this is this looking at 4 things. And so I modified this for a soccer player. You want to look at the muscles used. So for a soccer player, it's going to be obviously your posterior chain, a lot of that in your glutes. We got the max, median, min, quads. The one biarticulate quad muscle will be your rectus femoris, and you got the vastus lateralis, medialis, intermedius. Hamstrings, you got the bicep femoris in the lateral portion, and then the semis, membranosus, tendinosus. Got the whole calf complex, the quadrant. You got the gastroc and the soleus on the posterior side that go into the Achilles, into the calcaneus bone. And you got the anterior and posterior tib, peroneals. You got your adductors, which is magnus longus brevis. Obviously, your core is important, and you got different slings. So, how you're running and you're sprinting is important. So the actions that are taking place at the femur are going to be primarily extension. You will have flexion as well, adduction, rotation, and unilateral. So triple extension on the posterior chain is going to be real important. But the main difference between with sport is we get lost in the minutia, like comparing it to like powerlifting, and powerlifting is strictly bilateral. So like you got your bench press, your squats, and your deadlifts. Where soccer is very unilateral, being able to sprint. You have velocity in one speed in one direction, and the ability to stop, which is decelerate and then accelerate in different planes. So quickness and agility are really important. So we got to look at the injuries that are common. You're going to get the ankle, as he says he has, the knee, and with females, you're looking at a 2 to 8 times more of a likelihood of blowing out an ACL. And then an Achilles. Achilles is a very vulnerable lower shank posterior tendon that could act up, and that could be a nasty injury. The therapists that I consult with, they say it's probably the worst injury that you could ever encounter, a minimum of a 12-month process. ACL, you're still looking at a minimum of a 12-month recovery, but there's, these are injuries that we want to prep for. And so it's from someone who doesn't work with therapists, they may do something inappropriate, like train in that injury. So I've seen people do like really aggressive knee valgus exercises, like specific adaptation to impose demand. You want to expose those muscles and ligaments and connective tissue to that injury, and that's really aggressive. And to date, there's nothing that supports it. It's kind of like witchcraft. So I'm not going to do that with my athletes. I'm going to look at the hip and how the hip controls the knee, and how if the ankle can't move properly, there could be an effect out the knee. So that's called a joint by joint approach. So when I'm working with a soccer player, you want to go through all the joints to see how they're working. So when I work with this kid, I'm going to screen him and look at his ankle mobility to make sure he has a minimum amount, so I can bring him to the wall. You have a fist length, which is 4 inches. See if he can get his knee to touch the wall. That's going to be my ankle screen. And then I want to see what his hip looks like. So maybe I'm going to do a little manual movement, get him on his back. It's called hip scour test, and I'm gonna move his hip around to see what his mobility is like. Do you think I'm gonna do like the following program with him? Let's go.
Hey, Chris, I got a question while you're writing that. How are you? So I took, I took the NASM CES.
Yep.
And they spoke a lot about a lot of those mobility things that I hear you speak about a lot. And I do a lot of the ones that you bring up. The one like
what mobility ones?
Like the one with the knee, where if I put my fist 4 inches from the wall, I find that useful. A lot of the ones in NASM, the CES, they use the table.
Yep.
Do a lot of the mobility tests. Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, no, I taught NASM CES for over 5 years, and they get real big into the goniometer stuff. And there's some coaches out there. I wouldn't even call them strength coaches, because I see a strength coach as someone as like a reputable individual. I see people with a lot of anecdotes and experience. David Alexander being one of them. He's a Miami coach, and he works with a lot of high-end athletes. And I think Pat Davidson said it best, and he said it's not hard to train a top-end athlete. You could literally have them fucking eating Wheaties, and they're going to perform better. So whatever you do, if you push that on to the next person, you really don't know what the hell you're doing. And so within NASM, what they have you do is, I feel that they have you do like goniometer readings, because get them on the table to do a Thompson test, and you're going to do a lot of these different readings. I don't like that personally, because you're really getting into the realm of physical therapy, especially with the goniometer. And I fact checked this with a couple different therapists just to see if it was my ego getting in the way, or if that was just something that was legit. And every therapist that I've talked to, they confirm that the really only reason that you will do a goniometer reading would be for an insurance company to be able to relate that to them, so you can get more sessions, or it has to do with money that you can make. So getting someone on the table is nothing wrong with it, but I can do the same thing on the ground. I mean, but let's take, for example, you work at an Equinox, and the whole layout, there's like one spot over here where you can go in there, no one could see you. But the Equinox in Santa Monica, they have tables like right in the middle of the whole entire floor. I would encourage you to go to those tables, because you're on there. It's like you're on stage. People are going to see you like, oh, what's he doing with that person? And you get celebrities and you get high-end athletes in there. So if you have one of those folk and you're you're testing out you're doing a hip scour or something along those lines, and you're checking out their hip on the table, you may have a member like, oh, wow, that guy looks like he knows what he's doing. I want to work with them. So, but do you have to get people on a table? No, you can do all these things on the ground. I wouldn't encourage you to, go invest in the table. It's just, it's more so just kind of for flair and fluff. Hopefully that helps.
Gotcha. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah. So what do you guys think about this program for a soccer player? If I were to have them deadlift for 15, hip thrust for 8, and squats by 15, what do you guys think? So Dean's shaking his head. Why?
Like you said earlier, there's a lot of running, a lot of, I mean, I'm sure there's some movements in there that could work to some degree to like help explosion, but like as an overall, like the main 3 muscle groups, like it just wouldn't work.
So I would say the 3 exercises, if I had big blocks, I definitely wouldn't choose these ones. Out of these 3, which one would you want to use? This is going to be like battling the best whiskey, and you got 3 that are very similar. It is going to be an individual preference, but there is evidence out there that would support one of these would be slightly superior. Do you guys know which exercise that would be specifically for soccer and of horizontal sprinting?
The hip thrust?
Yep, the hip thrust has been shown to be superior. So out of those 3, I would keep that one in there. Deadlifts, I always challenge, why are we going past 8 or so? Because it's one of the more complex exercises. And so when you're doing that, it would not be optimal. So I would take those out. When you look at the actions, extension, adduction, unilateral is what I'll probably want to do more of. Did this guy say he's a beginner? Is it like you're working with a freshman high school team and none of them have trained? No, he's been training for a little bit. So we can be a little more aggressive. I'm not going to go do, a crazy amount of volume that first workout, but I'm going to implement some exercises. So my first exercise I'll probably do with them. This is like before warm up too. So the warm up would be very specific to what he can do to the sport. That's why it's called SED, specific adaptation to post demand. So I'm going to have him run back and forth. I'm going to have him do some side shuffles. I'm going to just kind of check out his movement to see how athletic is he really. People are always telling you, semi-pro, okay, but you could be just a really good, gifted athlete, but you may not have the coordination. So I just kind of want to screen you out in the beginning. And then I'm going to do an airplane would be a great exercise. Airplane, if you're not familiar with that, just type in show up fitness airplane. Your knees on the ground, you're going to take up your foot and you just bounce like you're an airplane. And what that does is you're going to take away the TFL, the gracilis, and the sartorius, which are biarticulate because you're bending the knee. And then you're just really training the glute med at the hip. And the glute med is a really important, and the max upper fibers are important for stability of the knee. And if your knee and ACL is prone to injuries, then I would want to kind of prep that area before the workout. So, do some airplanes, do some flexions, extensions, you've seen that before where you get into a squat position and your leg is abducted and you sit back and you do like a little bit of a flow through that one, or a hip flow. I want to check out his external internal rotation. I would do a 90-90 on there as well, just to see where there's any dead space. Dead space is where you don't have control, because then I could then implement that into the program. How important do you think is upper body strength?
I'd say important because they get bounced around, knocked around quite a bit.
True, but I wouldn't put it on something that I need to have like an upper body day. So you could incorporate upper body exercises, but I'm not going to do like, crazy weights. So I might do like a reverse lunge here into a maybe like a push up or a banded push up into an airplane here. And I'll do those again. And that's just going to help strengthen. So I would do 3 rounds, but I'd probably do like a 10, 8, and 6. So the load would be significantly heavier. So what this would look like is warm up with the bar. See how he looks. Great. Did I do a push-up? Obviously he can do them. So I'm going to probably have to lift the leg up and out. That's going to challenge the hip. Have him do maybe 10 to 15 of those, and he's going to hop up and do a little airplane. I'm going to add some weight on there now. We're going to do it for 10. Check out his form. Go into the push-up, into the airplane. We're going to rest. I'm going to educate him during the rest periods. Add some more weight. We're going to get 8. Back into the push-ups, do the other leg, airplane, and the last one, we're going to add some more weight and get to 6. Making sure that he's not adducting at the knee, so there's no valgus, internal rotation of the hip. I want to make sure he's driving through his heel. I want to make sure that he has the mobility, which I screened earlier at the ankle, so his knee can come over his toes, and I actually want them to. That's perfectly all right as long as you maintain those checkpoints. So I would do that for 3, technically 4 rounds, would be 3 working sets. And then the next one that I would do, here would be your 2, is I would do your hip thrusts into your A would be, if we did a push there, I'd do some chin-ups. It's good, like you said, you want to have some upper body strength to be able to push people around, but I'm not going to do many loaded exercise. I wouldn't do a bench press with them. I wouldn't do like anything that could potentially compromise, like bent over rows, like pendulays, where you're just doing a barbell row. I don't see much value there. I would go into a Nordic here. So our Nordics more for beginners or more advanced?
More hard.
Definitely. So more advanced, I'd probably be hitting 3 sets of maybe 15, 12, 10 here on hip thrusts. Chin-ups would be AMRAP. Nordics, how many reps would I be doing?
5.
5 max. Now, this guy may impress me too, and I've never seen it in person, so I might even challenge him with and be like, dude, I've worked with some badass athletes before, and I've never seen anyone do a concentric Nordic. So let's see what you got. A lot of soccer players have incredible hamstring strength. And so if he could, I want to see it, where it means you come down controlled, but then you can concentrically come back up. I'm not the best with football names, but who's the badass wideout for Kansas City?
Oh, Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I was gonna say Evans, but Hill. He has some videos of doing just cranking out like sets of 5, 6 of those. Like, holy fuck, that's impressive. That just tells you how important for speed down the field the hamstring strength is. And so from there, I'll probably get into some Bulgarians into maybe some reverse Nordics. And then I would be doing some. Now, what was the last thing that he said in there? Does he want all to be resistance?
Oh, shit. Can't remember.
Kyle says, oh shit, I can't remember. That's all right. He wants to do like conditioning in there as well. So maybe I'll do some suicides in there. So you do a Bulgarian maybe for 10. I don't want to go to like volitional fatigue on these. I kind of want to make it like a circuit. So do you think my rest period will be long or short? Short rest. Do my Bulgarians for 10. Do my reverse Nordics. That's going to help strengthen the patella tendon. And then you do a suicide. Rest maybe 30 seconds and you do it again. And you always want to, again, don't get in trouble by assuming just because of what he said on paper that he's an awesome athlete. You're going to learn very quickly through the initial assessment. And this could be 2 sessions, depending on where you work. If you work like in an Equinox, it would be 2. You'd sit down, you do all your testing stuff beforehand, and then you would schedule a time where he comes back. If you're at a show up, I'm going to have him come in. I would do blood pressure. I would do maybe 1 or 2 other measurement exercises, and then I'll get right into the workout within 10, 15 minutes. So I would do all this in one workout. And it's, as you can see, it's very unilateral based. We get some upper body in there, but I'm specifically implementing exercises that are going to help with this. Now, maybe at the end when we're stretching, I have them do some super slow calf raises. That's going to help strengthen the gastroc and prevent any type of Achilles stuff. Now, something that's important to take a look at is the bioenergetics. And if you're not familiar with bioenergetics, it's understandable because NASM doesn't teach you that stuff. But bioenergetics, there's actually 5 gears is what I call it. You have quick, immediate energy, which is ATP. So bomb goes up, boom, you sprint real quick. That's your body's ability. It's like lighting a match. You have quick, immediate fuel, and that's called adenosine triphosphate. So after, within maybe 8 to 10 seconds, also genetics play a role in fuel, obviously, you will be able to bind organic creatine, which is already in your body. People think creatine is like trend, but it's perfectly fine for you. And you will be able to bind the ADP, adenosine diphosphate, with CP, creatine phosphate, and you can make more ATP. So that's why some people will call it like ATP PC. That's what NASM calls it, but it's technically just your phosphagen system. So think of phosphagen as the ability to do maximal work from 0 to 30 seconds. The first part will be ATP. The second part will be combining with creatine. And then we have something called anaerobic glycolysis, which would be fast glycolysis. And that's like, think of it like gear 3 if you're in a stick shift. So gear 1, you're the fastest. That's ATP. You downshift into 2, that's creatine phosphate. And then you have 3, which would be fast glycolysis. 4 is not as fast as fast glycolysis. That's called slow glycolysis. And then we have gear 5, which is oxidation, which is where we primarily are using fat as a fuel source. When we are in gears 1, 2, and 3, we're primarily utilizing glycogen or carbs as a fuel source. And so the great thing about implementing the needs analysis is there's a lot of different research papers and groups out there that have studied the sport and what they do. So here's probably one of the more popular ones is they tell you the breakdown. So if I was working with a basketball player, I'm not going to train him the same way I would as a soccer player. So think of this as either a percentage of a workout or percentage of workouts per the month, depending as the strength coach, how often I'm going to work with them. So if this kid says, I made a mistake, what's his name? I always got to get people's names. What are we going with?
Jimmy.
Jimmer. He likes Jimmer. So we're going with Jimmer. And Jimmer over here decides that he wants, he was just wowed by the workout. And we assume that athletes have no money. He could have a sponsorship with Gatorade. He could have a lot of cash from saving up. I actually worked with a kid who was a soccer player, and he was a male stripper, and he had a shit ton of cash. He's like, dude, I work at night. I make like sometimes $1,000 a night. I got tons of cash. I'm like, please pay me in credit. I don't want your money. I don't want your cash. I don't know where that's been. But don't ever assume that just because of someone's title, they don't have money. You'll see that like, oh, I'm unemployed. Mom and dad could have an endless line of credit for them. So don't put labels on people. So maybe you wow him during the workout. He's like, shit, dude, that was the best thing I've ever had. My coaches I've worked with in the past suck compared to you. I want to train 5 times with you. Great. So here's what I suggest. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, specifically weights. Tuesday, Thursday, gonna be specific conditioning. So even though he told me he wants 50-50, my weird mind goes, yeah, no, I don't think so. I want to get more out of you. I know that you're going to perform way better by doing it 5 days a week. Do you want to look back in your 40s when you're my age and be like, oh man, I could have been pro? No, because you half-assed it. Now you're at an age right now where you got to buckle up. And I like your mentality with doing some work, but a lot of your training sucks. And I would say that right to him. And what part do you think I'm making reference to when I say a lot of his training sucks?
Fighting through the pain.
That is one, but something else with his actual training. What is he doing that I wouldn't have a soccer player do?
Push-ups?
Nope. I have him doing push-ups right here, Mark.
He's doing like 100 a day or something like that.
All right, get stronger. I'm up for that. So when we look at the bioenergetics, this is what's important to understand. So 50% of it's going to be sprinting. 20% is going to be fast glycolysis. Only 30% is going to be aerobic. So he's running way too fucking much. And it's like, it'd be like almost similar to like a baseball player. You look at like a baseball player, it's gonna be a lot more ATP probably. They don't have them here. Do they? No, but you don't need to have that crazy aerobic conditioning. It's good to have it, don't get me wrong, but running 5 to 6 miles is way too much. So what I prefer him to do would be we'll go to the track on an off day and we'll run a lap as fast as you can. We'll rest according to the actual the work to rest ratios that no one goes by. Everyone this is the stuff that pisses me off as a strength coach, because you see people do programs like, 30 seconds of jumps and then go into push-ups and go back into 30 seconds of jumps. It's just, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So when you do something that's really high intense, like a sprint around the track, that's going to take you maybe 75 seconds. So you need to be resting probably 3 minutes. And then we're going to do it again. And we'll do that for 4 laps. And then we're going to rest. I'm going to say, all right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to run 2 of them. He runs 2, and then maybe we wait 5 minutes. And he runs 2 again, and we wait 5 minutes. And the last thing today is you're going to run a mile as fast as you can. And if you don't run it under 8 minutes, and you're going to do it again. So that would be like more of an aerobic day. So notice how I'm not saying aerobic conditioning isn't important. We did a lap, which would be fast glycolysis, and we did 4 of them. So when you look at the energy needed, it's about 30. Right here, we're going to go soccer, 20%. I would say those are about even, 20 to 30%. So we ran 1 lap and we did it 4 sets. That's conditioning for this middle one. And then we ran 2 laps, which would be more over here. And then we ran a mile. So that would take care of his aerobic / anaerobic glycolysis conditioning on one day. And the next day he comes in, we're going to do a lot of sprint drills. Now, do you think I'm just going to have him strictly do liners like they do in basketball? No, because soccer is a lot more multi-directional. So maybe I'm getting him on the corner. So let's pretend like we have a, hey, stop it. Pretend like we got a.
So Chris, you said oxidative is more like gear 5?
Yeah.
So how come on that sheet that you just showed, it only showed a 30 for a soccer player?
That means 30%. So 30% of the sport, the demand of the sport is in oxidative. So right now, what he's currently doing, Jimmer is running 6 miles.
That's
way too much.
Okay.
So it's like, how, I mean, even if he's fucking fast as hell, I ran a 7-minute mile today and I wanted to die. If he's running 6 miles, maybe he's fast as hell. Let's say he's doing a 7-minute mile. That's 42 minutes. So that's way too long just to be in oxidative, because never in soccer, I don't play soccer. I suck. I'm terrible with my feet. But never in soccer are you running back and forth for 42 minutes. You're going to go fast, and then you're going to go kind of slow, kind of like in basketball, right? Fast break, Curry goes to the hole, he goes quick. But then he kind of jogs back, and then he gets back into his stance, and he's waiting for the play. So you're recovering. But when you go for a run, that's not what you're doing. You're pushing it for a long period of time. So let's pretend like this is a terrible soccer field. But maybe what I'd have him do is I'd sprint and then side shuffle here and sprint, side shuffle here, back pedal here, side shuffle, and then do that for sets. So when you do this, that would be 1. And then for more of an anaerobic day, I'd rest for 10 to 12 times the amount of work. So maybe it takes him maybe a minute. That's actually, that's false, because it would be, if it was less than 10 seconds, it would be 10 to 12. So maybe we rest for 2 times that. So you rest for 3-4 minutes. So essentially what you'll be able to do is you have a soccer team. Is anyone here play soccer? I literally have never played before.
I played in college.
There we go. Who said that?
Lisa.
Well, I'm kind of like the kid in Superbad. If you guys ever saw that, when he's telling his buddies about the party, when the soccer ball comes in, he just kicks as hard as he fucking can. He's like, screw you, Fogel, whatever.
Yeah.
That's like me, Lisa. So I'm not the best, but how many players are on the soccer team?
11.
11. So you got 11
Including
down
the goalie.
and including the goalie.
Yep.
So then on the squad, what do you have? 20? I don't know.
Probably. I mean, I played in college. It was probably closer to 18.
Okay. So you got 18 girls. So how you do this, you have the coach, they got their whistle, and they're going to go whoop. And then when they hit here, they do the next whoop, whoop. So then you may have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people going. So by the time that one comes all the way around, they're going to be in the back of line for, maybe another 6 people. So by the time they come up, maybe I have everyone rest for a minute, and then we go again. And I may do this specific drill for maybe 3 to 5 rounds. Now, Lisa, what were some common drills? Like in basketball, for example, suicides. That's like the #1 drill that everyone does.
Totally. Yep.
What about in soccer?
So I would say we did them a lot in soccer, actually, too.
Okay.
And just start drills were huge, because it's basically just for, 90 minutes, whatever, stopping and starting.
Mhm.
Sprint, stop,
So with the
like you said,
suicide,
it's
would you go 50-yard line or would you go 20-yard line?
20-yard, I'm sorry, for suicides?
Yeah.
Yep. So like the goal line, the penalty box area, then to the halfway line, then to the other goal line, and then to the other penalty box area, and then to the other goal line.
And how long does that usually take?
This was like 15 years ago. I mean, I don't know. It's a good question.
Well, then you got some
There's
homework.
a
You got to
lot-
go out there and time yourself and see what it is. Let's say it takes 45 seconds, because that's
Yeah.
usually what it takes about in basketball. So,
It's got to be longer than, I was going to say, it's definitely longer than basketball because
okay, true. So
it's like a
that's good
football
point.
field.
So let's go with, let's say 75 seconds. All right. So maybe what you would do is you would do it based off of your slowest person. And I know like in sport, it's kind of like the punishment, but it's like, all right, when you're done, we're going to start again after 15 seconds of the last person finishes. So then you have that, the goalie, whoever, so like in basketball, it's always the center. He always fucks you over. So it's like, you do it and then, all right, well, we wait 15 seconds and you do again. Maybe you do 3 or 4 of those rounds. That would be like your aerobic conditioning. I would much rather Jimmy be doing tons of these than running miles, because what's one of the problems he's experiencing?
Knee pain, ankle pain.
Ankle pain. And I don't know about you guys, but where do most people go for a run?
Street.
Yeah, so that's not what a soccer field is. So you're going to get a little bit of a give, a lot more of a give on a field, or even go to a track. I'd much rather him, if he want, maybe he's just like, you know what, I love running. All right, man, well, then go to the track and run a mile, and then wait for 5 minutes and run it again. And each time try to beat that time, because that would be a lot more specific to what soccer has to present. And so that would be my challenge for myself when I have this individual in front of me. I would want to get him in at least 5 days a week, 3 days with weights, 2 days with conditioning, and then depending on when the season comes up. But you guys got a chance to take a look at what the programming would be. Now let's take a, come on. There we go. Let's take a look at.
Curtis, I got a question on those Nordics. You talked about, I've never really done them before. I started doing them. What is the main difference between the regular Nordic and the reverse Nordic muscle wise?
Yeah, so it's like saying, what's the difference between a leg curl and a leg extension?
Okay, one's in flexion, one's in extension.
Yeah, so one's going to be quad dominant, one's going to be hamstring dominant. Obviously, the Nordic is a billion times harder. And I always teach people how to fail on that one. So it's like you do it, and if something feels off, then you throw your butt back. It's just, and this is what's frustrating with trainers is they cherry pick data. So there's going to be someone out there, because we're going to put this on YouTube. They're going to say, oh my God, 40 minutes, way too long. I'm not going to watch this. I'm just going to go through and look at the programming. Okay. Oh, Nordic, what's that? They're going to type in Nordics. Oh, Nordics are good for soccer players. So I worked with a girl who year post, I mean, I have all these horror stories, and then I've had dipshit trainers online like, oh, you're just highlighting the horror stories. I literally have more horror stories than I do success stories with trainers. And that's something that I'm really passionate about changing in this industry, because this girl, poor girl, she did a full workout with this trainer. And at the very end, he had her do 3 sets of 15. And that's just, and she blew out both of her ACLs during the session. And it's like, what the hell? Like, you would never do that. And so that's what's so frustrating is if you implement these exercises appropriately, the athlete's going to get better. And you're going to prevent injuries, because that's the whole purpose, right? And so when you look at the needs analysis, you look at the muscles, you look at the muscle actions, you look at the injuries that are common, bioenergetics, and then when you design the program, you make it specific to the athlete. Now, this could be Jimmer's cousin who's really overweight. Now I'm going to change that for him. Now imagine working with a team that's in high school and they're all deconditioned and they're beginners. Obviously, these exercises are going to change, but the template's the same. So we work with a group of lacrosse players, and it's kind of similar to soccer. I'm saying it's not the same, obviously, if it's foot versus hand. But, do you think we started out with reverse lunges? Do you think we did Bulgarians? No, we did step ups. We did pistols with eccentric control, because that's unilateral. The first day of practice, we did pistols, 3 to 4 reps. And we worked with how they managed valgus. And if they had a little bit of valgus, guess what I didn't do? Stop everyone, sound an alarm, go foam roll, and then work on activating muscles. I just cued them. I showed them a video. Let's see if I can actually, see if you guys can watch this video. This is one of the girls who we worked with a while ago. This was 2018, I think. Yeah, perfect. Let's see if you guys can see this. It's the first day of practice. Second exercise. do the other one. Is that perfect? No, but it wasn't terrible. So how is she gonna get better at that? Like you saw that she definitely accelerated down. So what that shows me, unilaterally, her glutes are weak. And so I practiced that with them. We did a lot of single leg bridges as their homework. And it was amazing to see what happened in a matter of maybe 5 to 6 sessions. The control started getting so much better because we repeated every single time they came in. We did the same thing. So for Jimmy, I'm going to do a lot of these same exercises. So what I could do is work out one. We do obviously this one. So now just move him down the line. So the next time he comes in on Wednesday, we start off with hip thrust. Do you think I'm going to use the same weight? No. So I'm going to move this weight to match this one. So let's pretend like Jimmy, most dudes suck with hip thrust. So let's say he did 135, 185, 225. So on Monday or Wednesday, when he comes back in, I'll probably start out, do a warm up 135. First set, I would do 185. Then I would do 225 or more reps. And then I would do maybe 275. Instead of doing chin-ups, I would do push-ups again, maybe with a band. And instead of doing airplanes, maybe I do some variant of a Copenhagen. Copenhagens would be good to incorporate because that's adductor strength. So you could throw in here like a side out of Copenhagen. I'm probably gonna spell that wrong, but. And then I would go into Bulgarian second. Maybe the first time we did Bulgarians, we use no weight. This time I'm gonna use one weight. So you're gonna get that core engagement. I'm not gonna go crazy, maybe 10, 15, 20 pounds. Instead of doing reverse Nordics, I do Nordics as my second one. And then I go into chin-ups again. And then at the end, I do dumbbell reverse lunges and I make it kind of like a drill. So he does reverse lunges for 5, and then he goes back and forth and he runs. And then after a minute or so, we rest, and the rest is the plank or maybe a wall sit. And then we repeat to get that anaerobic / aerobic conditioning. So notice where I put it. It would be, I wouldn't suggest combining them both in like resistance training, like doing your resistance and then next doing like anaerobic. It's when you design a program for people, you typically want to separate the two. Now, if I want to do aerobic conditioning, that's fine. I wouldn't suggest doing like that drill I saw, like the suicides, and then get into the resistance portion. That would just not be optimal. So that's how I would design this program. You already have the week essentially, because this would be day 1. You go through like that. Day 2, you start with hip thrust, which would be number 1 now. And then the last day of the week, you do Bulgarians. And then maybe you want to do 1 day a week of do some PAP training, a post-activation potentiation. So that would be like a jump into the Bulgarians. And that could be something that would be beneficial. Maybe you do a box jump for 2 or 3, maybe even, probably 3 sets of 5 or 6. You don't want to do much more than 6. So you look at the programming, it's 3 days resistance. I'm not going into strength because it's kind of irrelevant for soccer players. I'm really trying to prevent injuries by looking at the adductors, also the hamstrings. I would be okay with maybe in the beginning of a couple of the workouts, like, you're going to, maybe I shouldn't record this part, but you get them on a Bosu ball and you throw them a soccer ball and they kick it back to you. You do that for a couple sets of 5 or 6. That's fine. But what I don't like to see is when that circus shit takes over the whole entire workout. And then now you have them doing a Bosu ball squat, stability ball squat, and now it's just a circus show. So the efficacy of implementing some unstable surface training like a stability ball or Eric's pad, it may be beneficial, but you look at the percentage of the workout, it's 1 or 2 sets, nothing crazy. And if you want to post that on Instagram, I'm all for it, but explain why you're doing it. Here's a great little B, or here's a great little warm up, or here's a great finisher with this soccer player that we're doing for 3 to 4 minutes. Because that could mean, don't get me wrong, as Lisa can attest to, every soccer field isn't perfectly flat. The cleats are going to screw that up. So being on an unstable surface for a little bit would be advantageous, I think. All right, guys and girls, do you have any questions on how to train a soccer player?
Chris, you had mentioned before about when you went into a certain position, turned off the semi It was earlier in the conversation, but I was a little confused by that. I should have asked earlier, but
Whiskey's kicking in, Mark. I already forgot.
yeah, me too. All right.
Dean, you know what I was talking about?
I think it was when you were talking about the airplanes. You said you put them in a specific position and it turns off the
Okay. So let's see if I can. I'm gonna probably hurt myself. Balancing whiskey could be bad. We'll see. So here is your airplane exercise. So go here. So when I stand up, my TFL, my gracilis, and my sartorius are going to be biarticulate, and they're going to take care of the knee and the hip. When I bend the knee, I take the 3 out. So now what I'm doing is I'm just challenging the glute med at the hip. And they call it an airplane because it's like I'm balancing. So that's a great exercise to do before. It's a great exercise to work with hand-eye coordination. You could put that in probably the top 5. It's always, you got to be tricky doing that, but it's fun for Instagram. Like top 5 best exercises soccer players should be doing because of the vulnerability of the knee.
Got it. Thank you.
Preguntas? Any more questions? So hopefully this was helpful. This was our first week. Danny and I are going to be doing a little social media one tomorrow. Next week, the internship is technically off, but we will still be having online classes, so just the in-person. Next class is going to be starting up the 11th of January. San Diego's getting close to being full. LA and Santa Monica still have a few spots left open. Those are Monday through Friday. Classes are between 10 to 12. They're 90 minutes long. We do practice social distancing, masks, and temp checks. So if you're ever interested in doing the in-person, feel free to reach out. And we will be offering a weekend course as well. The online will be this. So for me, it's like I'm not doing shit next week anyway. So I mean, if people are around on the Christmas Eve, I mean, I'll be willing to have a class. But I'm guessing probably Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Maybe I can do a drunken one on Thursday, but I'm open to whatever you guys are open to for the interns. So I have a bunch more of these I need to do. So I think I've knocked down 5. I want to do 40 of them. So I'm going to be offering these a lot more as we progress. So just make sure to read the content and the post of what the expectations are if you want to do this. I always appreciate it when you guys tag us in your story, let people know what you're doing. And for you, I always say that, selfishly because it helps us, but also I can't tell you how many times students have told us that they've had someone reach out to them because they said, oh, I didn't know you were a trainer. I thought that you were this. And so you put that in your story. Studying how to work with a soccer athlete. If you know anyone that wants to get training, hit me up. People have gotten clients just from posting the stuff in your story. And as you listen to Danny on Fridays today, she's great at getting you guys engaged and utilizing your social media platforms to generate revenue. And I think it's such a cool story. In 2018, our online revenue was $0. This year, our online revenues we're going to clear probably close to 200 plus. And I credit a lot of that to her because she told us where to focus. And I'm a great soldier where she says, do this, I'll do a bunch of it. And so I couldn't tell you the last time one of our stories didn't have a story in there. I'm always posting something. She gives me pointers. I listen to every single one of her classes. I was in there today. So I can't suggest doing that enough because a big flaw I see with trainers besides not knowing how to program is a lack of business acumen and getting in front of people and optimizing your social media platform. So, all right, y'all, hopefully you have a great night. Watch some good Christmas movies if that's what your thing is. Drink some good 4 Roses whiskey and enjoy your Friday. Stay safe.